Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Need for Speed Unbound. Now, a few days back I gave you my first impressions review of this game. I'm a little bit behind schedule with it, which it just is what it is, and I thought, do you know what, after doing a little bit of the multiplayer and doing some of the early multiplayer and kind of getting a feel for what it really is, I thought I'd give my initial review on the multiplayer side of things as well. So Need for Speed Unbound multiplayer, it's almost kind of a separate thing from the story mode itself. It does kind of sort of go together in slight ways, so things such as kind of the cars you unlock through story mode and such will come into your multiplayer games. This will give you kind of more cars to use and stuff, which is really nice. I really do like the fact that it does that. However, in terms of kind of unlocking the cars and, you know, how you go about purchasing them and stuff and your money, it's all separate from the story mode. So you'll have a separate amount of, you know, cash for your story, separate amount of cash for your multiplayer. In kind of story mode, you have ways to unlock cars in there, and in multiplayer, it kind of essentially is done through challenges, which I actually really like, because it kind of, if you want a specific car, you're going to have to do specific things to unlock, you know, the car that you want. You know, currently I'm kind of going for the Mazda RX-7s, which means I'm going to have to use a lot of, you know, Mazda vehicles, and that's just kind of how it works. It seems to be you have some kind of brand and certain, you know, brand challenges, as well as some like overall ones for different kind of you know, speed tiers. So you'll have like B tier challenges, S tier challenges, A tier challenges, all that kind of good stuff. There's a lot to get into. However, overall, I just cannot really shake the feeling that this almost feels like a beta. So you may be thinking, what exactly do you mean by beta? Well, what I mean is there's essentially this overarching feeling that there's a lot of room to improve with this game, in all honesty. You know, in terms of its multiplayer side, it feels like you're kind of playing a, you know, if a game was in pre-season before it kind of gets into its main content or kind of gets updated throughout the year. That's kind of the feeling you get with Need for Speed Unbound. You know, there's just not too much to do. You're very kind of limited in the sense of what you want to do with this game. Now, you can still get your collectibles and, you know, do your racing online and stuff, which is kind of the main meat of it. However, things like police cars are not present, police chases then cannot be done. You know, it almost feels like it's just waiting for a lot more content to be added in and a lot more ways to play. Now, one thing I really just don't like about how the lobbies work is the fact is, if you're put in a lobby with people that might just want to cruise around and such, then essentially that's what you've got to do. You know, if you try and start up the kind of playlist where you mostly unlock the cars and, you know, do races and such, and, you know, a lot of the challenges to unlock stuff are done, and people don't want to race in that lobby, then you're essentially going to find yourself probably having to jump into another lobby and hope to God you can get a decent amount of players going. A lot of the time you'll end up like this race that I've just done, essentially with just two of you if you've got friends. If you haven't got friends, I can see this becoming a very frustrating experience. You know, the way you earn money in this game is by doing races, and it almost appears like most people just want to jump straight into the S tier races and the S plus races and essentially just race from there. If you want to kind of do B races, there's not really kind of much to do in that kind of sense. A lot of people just want to jump in the fast cars, which means then you kind of have to, you know, work a way to, you know, find out how to unlock those that might not be the fastest cars in the game, if that kind of makes sense. So what I mean by that, if you kind of, let's say you wanted something like a Mazda Miata MX-5, whatever you want to call it, which is a slower car, you're probably going to have to find yourself doing races in kind of B and A tier. However, most people, even on day one, which is where most of this footage is from with the Palace Edition, most people just didn't want to do that. It was very difficult to kind of get a lobby going. Now, my hopes to kind of improve this is, if we want to race, send the invite out around to other lobbies as well that are kind of running, not just the lobby you're in. That way we can get more people going, you know, have a better matchmaking system, because from what I can gather, that's kind of not the way it works at the minute. I could be wrong on that, but that's just kind of the feeling I get. Like, nobody wants to run the slower races, everybody wants to jump in at S tier, so you just end up with a bunch of BMW M3s, the classic Most Wanted car, essentially just racing against each other. So most kind of online races away from the slower lobbies currently, because obviously people are still early game and trying to build the money up and stuff, are just running obviously a one-mate race, which is a bit disappointing. I personally really like like the idea of, you know, beating all the kind of B racers and unlocking all the cars, doing all the challenges, working my way through the tiers, but it appears like most people just want to jump in at the deep end, and then it just ends up being carnage and a one-mate race, which is a bit of a shame. It might sound like a bit of a petty criticism, but I think kind of balancing out the lobbies, so there's not either just a lobbies full of cruisers where you get nobody joining your racers, or kind of getting lobbies where there's a kind of a mix of people wanting to do different things would be nice. I know it's kind of difficult to judge, but you know, like I said, sending that invite out to other servers that you might not be in would probably be a good idea, because I'm sure that's not the way it works currently. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it only sends out the invite from the server you're in. I did kind of touch on the fact that there's no police and such in this game. Now, don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love this feature, and I do hope it comes sooner rather than later. There's one of the best things I like to do in other Need for Speed games was kind of just jump in and get involved in other people's cop chases. You know, I absolutely loved it. The police are actually fairly good in this game. You know, don't get me wrong, they're a bit on the easy side, but kind of for a lobby running where people might be of mixed skill and stuff, I feel like they'd be very well implemented at the kind of difficulty they're at now, where, you know, if you want to get them higher chases going, getting the blood pumping and all that good stuff, you know, risking, you know, all sorts of everything really, because I feel like the difficulty they're going to have is implementing kind of the system they have in story. You know, I don't feel like there's going to be that risk there, even if we do have the police. You know, you're not kind of running back to the safe house to bank money in multiplayer, which is another thing, you know, that kind of differs and makes it a separate experience. It's very much kind of go around, do your collectibles, do some races, and that's kind of really it currently. You know, if you want to cruise and stuff, you can do, you know, but in general there's just not really much depth to the actual gameplay in terms of, you know, modes and racing types that are in the game. There's no showcase, I believe, so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously this is after only a few hours in the multiplayer, you know, where you kind of get your first impressions going. There's no kind of drift events as far as I'm concerned. There's no ways to really bet with your the people you're racing, so there's no betting system in there. It just feels like there's a lot of missed potential, and I feel like that's all I can really say about the multiplayer. Is it just feels like it's in beta and it needs more. Now, I cannot remember exactly what kind of got me thinking, but it appears that they may kind of do some kind of season updates. The fact that it kind of says episode 1, I believe, on the main menu makes me think that this will be updated, which is only a good thing in my opinion. If they drop free updates where it kind of adds more to the world and kind of gives us new things, then I'm all for it. There is a lot of potential with this game and with its multiplayer. I hope to God it's not going to be a kind of Need for Speed, you know, heat situation where support's pulled very, very early and we're all basically having to, you know, put up with this game for 3 years with, you know, next to no support, and we see the same situation where Need for Speed just goes very, very quiet for, you know, a good amount of years before finally picking up when a new release comes around. I genuinely do see a lot of kind of, you know, potential with this game, with the multiplayer. I feel like it could be massive. You know, I feel like it could be on along the lines of, you know, the likes of any other open world racing game. To be quite honest, I just think it needs the support there, it needs the attention there, and it needs the love from the developers to kind of keep this going, because overall Need for Speed Unbound is probably the most solid Need for Speed we've had in the longest time. You know, people that haven't played it will just go straight to the effects, but that's kind of the only thing they can really comment on. You know, in terms of the actual gameplay and the feel and the way it plays, it's a solid game. So I just hope, you know, the likes of EA and Criterion give this some proper post-launch support for at least a good few years, at least until the next Need for Speed comes along. Whether the, you know, we get more updates early on in the game's life cycle and they kind of, you know, slowly fade them out before the next release, I'm all for it. As long as we kind of get that support that this game definitely needs and keeps the multiplayer alive and feeling fresh, then I'm definitely all for it. So overall, my honest opinion, that is that kind of Need for Speed Unbound multiplayer, it just feels like it's kind of in beta and it can be really grown upon, and I genuinely think it will. You know, I think over time we'll see a completely different look and feel to this game. You know, if we come back, say, in a year's time and check it out and see what's changed, I've got a feeling there'll be a lot you know, that's kind of different from where we started off. So currently I wouldn't say get the game for its multiplayer. It's far too in its infancy. If this is the plan overall and it stays like this, then to be quite honest, if you're just a multiplayer person, don't even bother picking up Need for Speed Unbound, in all honesty. If you're a single player person, you've got a lot of content with the story mode and such. I genuinely really enjoy what we have in the single player. Again, I just feel like it's the multiplayer side that's kind of lacking, which is, you know, not a bad thing, to be quite honest. Usually it's the other way around, where it's all multiplayer focused and people that just want a decent kind of, you know, I guess campaign story mode and such to play through kind of get left out. It's kind of the opposite here, so I'm not going to complain in that sense. It's great to have a proper, you know, single player driven game with the multiplayer added on, and that's kind of what it feels like here. Whereas a lot of other games these days will just go multiplayer focused, you know, the story's kind of a couple of hour addition and then it's kind of forgotten about, and you know, that's kind of it. So it is nice to get that refreshing feeling that the single player came first, but overall, if you're kind of getting this for multiplayer, just kind of wait off and see what happens. In general, it is still an overall fun multiplayer. I just don't think it has that longevity which it currently really should have, to be honest. It just seems like there's too much missing and too much that kind of needs to be added to kind of bring it up on that par with what we have in the single player of this game. So that's going to be it for today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn those notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. All my links for my Discord, Twitter and all that are in the description down below, as well as my donation links if you want to donate and help out the channel. Thank you so much for your support recently. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.